I find that there's so many people in life that contradict their core values unknowingly, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe subconsciously they make decisions that are out of alignment with their core values, and then it leads to a life that they're either dissatisfied with, or it leads to a level of internal unhappiness or resentment, and they don't even realize why, but it's because there's a contradiction there.
Hello, and welcome to Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. This podcast is dedicated to chiropractors who are in the seasons of launching and building their practice. Join myself, Dr. Lona, and my co-host, Dr. Bobby, as we have conversations each week as it relates to building the practice of your dreams. And remember, you can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. We're here to lead you on the way.
What's up, team? Welcome back to the Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast with the amazing Dr. Lona Cook and myself, Dr. Bobby Olajasevic. We come to you every single week and unpack to you guys from the trenches, practice building tips that you can incorporate into your office immediately. And today's topic is something that I'm very excited about, because I know when you speak to chiropractors that are, maybe Lona, we call them in the more advanced levels of their business development, their practice development, this is one topic they all agree upon. And this is one topic that continues to resurface. And what we're going to be talking about today, guys, is contradictions. So that's right. Contradictions in your behaviors relative to your core values, contradictions to your behaviors relative to your goals, contradictions relative to your behaviors to your vision of what you're trying to achieve this year. Mm-hmm. Because we both agree that we love what Ayn Rand in Atlas Shrugged said. And there's a famous quote floating around in chiropractic. I heard this first through one of my great mentors, Dr. Patrick Gentempo, where he would say, contradictions lead to destruction in your life. And the level of destruction is relative to the size of the contradiction. So, Lona, I know you and I were talking about this, and I'd love to get your opening thoughts on contradictions. What on earth does this even mean? And how is this something that's applicable to me? And more importantly, how do I actually have examples of this and take this now into my practice life to help me grow this year?
Yeah. When you were talking there, Bobby, I was thinking it's the subluxation, right? These contradictions are the subluxation within our minds, within our energy fields, within how, we're looking at what the potential is. And maybe a lot of the contradictions are under the surface, just like people don't feel subluxation all the time. They may not see where they're in contradiction with what they say they want and their behavior. So that's why we wanted to have this conversation, because when we unearth some of these incongruencies, a lot of times you can learn how you can either tweak your mindset, tweak your behavior, see where you've been out of integrity with, what you're saying and what you're doing. And that can lead to crazy growth, actually, by just making some of these small and sometimes large changes in how we go about our behaviors as it relates to what we want in our life.
Yep, spot on. So I think the first question that pops up in my mind when I hear this is, okay, I understand what a contradiction is, but a contradiction to what? What do you mean by a contradiction? Do you want to elaborate? What do we mean when we say you're contradicted? What does that mean, Lona?
Yeah. I'll use the example of money, right? A lot of people say they want to have more money, but they may not be willing to think different thoughts around how they go about obtaining money. They may continually think very lack-focused thoughts. They may not be willing to go to work to do the things to become more valuable. That would be a contradiction. I say I want this. I say that this is important to me, but my behavior and my thoughts would indicate otherwise, right? That would be an example of a contradiction.
Yeah, that's a great one. That's a massive one. I think to truly start to unearth your contradictions, you have to have a great understanding first around your core values. So your core values are a set of things, a set of rules that are important to you in your life. And every single human being has a set of core values. You may not have recognized or put conscious thought into what are your core values, or maybe you haven't done this recently. And if you haven't, that is what your first action step would be on the back of this call. And it's funny because, we go into different styles of masterminds and we coach and lead different styles of masterminds. And one trend that I've seen, Lona, is the higher the level of the mastermind, the more things come back to the core values. It's interesting how that works, right? So there's lessons to be learned there. So I look at that and I go, core values are the things that are important to you. A classic example of this is if, I swore a profanity now, that would offend some people, other people wouldn't care. That's because some people are contradicting their core values, right? That's what it comes down to. So I find that there's so many people in life that contradict their core values unknowingly. Okay, maybe subconsciously they make decisions that are out of alignment with their core values, and then it leads to a life that they're either dissatisfied with, or it leads to a level of internal unhappiness or resentment, and they don't even realize why, but it's because there's a contradiction there. Let me give you an example. If you have a core value around health, but your business is overcoming you, you're not working out, you're not looking after your own body, you're feeling always exhausted and run down, you're going to start to resent your business, and you're not going to be happy with your career. If you have a core value around abundance, right, or monetary abundance specifically, but your practice is really struggling, you're not making the right decisions, you kind of contradicted there in a core value, and your practice is representing it, so that's going to lead to frustration and resentment of your practice eventually, right? Those are some classic examples of it. So here is one of the biggest examples, and I know, Lona, we've got 4 or 5 examples that we want to unpack here for you guys to start to open up your eyes and to hopefully allow you to audit your life and to try and find out, where are you in contradiction? Because we all have these things that pop up for us. Let me give you the number one, potentially biggest one that I see when I talk to chiropractors. So I'll hear chiropractors a lot of the time talk to me about, they're frustrated with people not starting care or conversion, or my associate isn't converting properly. On some level, it relates back to a conversion issue. People don't want to buy, and I hear things like, it's the environment, it's the recession, it's the area that I'm in. All of these things pop up that people aren't buying, or they're delaying buying. And my first question to that person is, how do you make buying decisions? In fact, how much did you delay the last time that you were faced with a buying decision? Because at the same time, I'll talk to those people, they'll reach out for help, and then you tell them exactly what they need to do and the next action step they need to take, and that might have a monetary exchange associated with that, and they procrastinate around it, right? And it's like, if you have that level of procrastination around your purchasing decisions, then that's exactly what you're going to be attracting into your life whenever you're giving somebody a potential solution that you think is going to be the right fit for them. So that's an example of a contradiction in your behaviors compared to what you're trying to manifest in your life.
And Bobby, you know me, I geek out on energetics, and that's like natural law in action, because we are mirrors. Like, everything is really just mirroring what choices we've made, right? So even, for those of us that geek out on who's laying on our table, is meant for us to adjust them. And a lot of times what they have going on, like, it's also advice to yourself sometimes. This is true whether we're mirroring how we're making financial decisions, or mirroring many other things in our life, is looking at that and seeing what is coming at you. It a lot of times helps you clue into where you need to make different decisions.
Yeah, and totally. What's the saying? I think it's something, the world is not as it appears, but as you see it. So, what you see, you attract that exact same thing. So if you're having issues with conversion, have a look at your own buying behavior, and have a look at your own purchasing behavior in terms of how long does it take you to move, make decisions, exchange. It's funny, when I learned this, Lona, I pride myself on any business that I interact with of being like an awesome customer, of just being an easy person, of not having like a million questions trying to find a reason why it's not the right fit for me, of not like delaying. It's like, if something lines up to my core values, tick, 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 okay, great, rock and roll. Like, I really pride myself on not wasting time, not wasting my own time, because I know that there's an opportunity cost that comes along with delaying things as well, right?
Mm-hmm. So good. And you can learn from that, because Bobby has one of the biggest practices probably in the world, right? And so again, he's just showing us where, this above, down, inside out, or inside out thinking of what goes through his mind. He's making those decisions also because he realized what's going to show up in his practice as a reflection of that.
Yep. Right? Yep. Spot on, Mike. Nailed it. All right. So that's number one. What's the second one you can give us, Lona? What's the second example that you see rampant inside chiropractic as a contradiction? It's stunting people's growth.
Yeah, this is a great one that we were talking off screen about, which is like, do you take your own advice? Are you actually the picture of health yourself, or at least working towards improving your health? Doesn't mean that you have to be perfect. It just means, like, are you actually walking your talk, right? It's hard to believe a doctor who they themselves is not actually congruent with their own values around what they're selling.
Oh, that one is going to hit hard for people. And that one, I tell you, is something that requires a bit of self-reflection. Mm-hmm. But Lona, you absolutely nailed it. I look at my own decision-making process around things, and when I want to get better at something, one of the first things that I do,
what?
I find someone who's world-class at that thing. Okay. So if I want to get like really, really wealthy, I want to get advice from someone who's really, really wealthy. It sounds pretty straightforward. I'm surprised at how not straightforward in today's life it is. And I think it's because of social media and the advent, like anyone can kind of present themselves as an expert. I think that's what it is. But that's my first thing. I look at who is somebody that's world-class at this. And you know what? In the beginning, I might not like some of the things that they tell me. I might not like some of the ways they want me to take my own initiative. They don't connect every single dot for me. They don't kind of say, oh, do this and then this and then this and then this and then this. They give me the dots and then allow me to connect the dots in my own way, right? So that's the same when it comes to health. We are in true healthcare, I believe, not sick care, right? Which means we have this message of how an optimized functioning nervous system leads to whole body health, physical, chemical, and emotional, okay? And we talk about the nervous system being the energetic system of the body. But what kind of energy are we showing up into the office? Are we showing up as a picture of health? Yes, guys, I think those things matter. Posture, how do you look posture-wise? Energy, how do you look energetic-wise, right? How do you communicate? Facial expressions, all of these things matter because subconsciously people are judging us. And if we're asking them to make a commitment of thousands of dollars when it comes to health, I think that you should be rocking up as a picture of health.
Yeah, I agree. And Dr. Gilles LaMarche, who, now is one of the heads at Life University, his story is so powerful. It hit me when I heard it, where he had been in practice for a long time, was getting adjusted, but not on any one chiropractor's schedule. He had friends he'd pop in at, get adjustments, but he wasn't anyone's chiropractic patient, if you know what I mean. And that really hit me, where it's like, yeah, I get adjusted, but nobody has me set up for my rescans. Nobody has me actually on the books in a way where I'm being taken care of. And that was kind of like, that hit home. And so it's like, to what degree are you following your advice? And like, are you skipping your staff's appointments? Like, someone asked me one time, like, how do you fit it in the day to get your CAs adjusted? And I literally thought she misspoke. I was like, how do you not? Like, they're doing it with you, and like, we got to fit them. It was just a very interesting conversation. Again, it showed like incongruencies of like, well, if I don't have time to take care of the people serving me, how do, like, just think about how we may have those things goofed up in our minds.
Yeah, and what a powerful story that is. Like, literally, he was told to pack his affairs and, start signing off in life. And that was the moment that he had the realization that, well, hang on, I have been getting adjusted, but have I been on a care plan, okay, with a chiropractor who has me booked for a schedule of care, with regular re-examinations, with re-x-ray protocols, with everything that I'm telling my patients to do? And I ask you that question, are you doing that right now? Because if the answer to that is no, it's a contradiction. Okay, you're asking somebody to do that, to come and see you 3 times a week, but you yourself haven't stuck to a care plan 3 times a week. Contradiction.
Yes.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, very clear one. Yep, love it. All right, that's a second one that we see very commonly, guys. Think about this for a second. If you just started mirroring the person that you want in your report of findings, okay, and being that person, your person's decisions. If you started to, put a line in the sand and say, hey, all the advice I'm giving my patients, I'm going to go through discipline and hard work to actually start doing this myself. Would your life not improve? Yes or no?
Yeah.
It would improve big time, right? And we're only into 2 things here. They're examples of contradictions, how you want to iron them out. All right, a third contradiction. So a third one is, how do you show up as a leader? So what do we mean by that? What we mean by that is, I know that if you listen to this, if you have team and if you have staff, people around you, you have a certain expectation around how you want those people to show up, right? You want them to show up also to the shift prepared. Maybe you want them to show up to team training prepared, engaged. You want them to show up energized. You want them to show up contributing. You want them to be asking for referrals, for example, okay? So you want these things from your team, but are you doing that 100%? Are you preparing for team meetings so that you've shown up to the meeting or the board meeting or the training with 100% clarity with where you're going, right? Are you showing up to the shift already having looked at the shift the day before with an understanding about what is the flow, where are the new patients, where are the reports, who's coming in, are there any special appointments today? Like, you should have a complete awareness around that. So the third one is the way that you expect your team to show up. You need to make sure that you are the picture of that person showing up as well. And if you're just winging things, I hear chiropractors say this all the time, right? Oh yeah, I do a pretty good job at winging it, sure. But you won't consistently do a good job at winging it. That's the issue with that. And for me, winging it just shows me that someone's underprepared. What are your thoughts on this, Lona?
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, how would you show up if one of your mentors was watching you all day with your team, right? How would you show up with how you trained your team, how would you show up to do the huddle? Like, are you really showing up at your top notch like you would if Bobby was in your practice with you, or if I was in your practice with you? And that version of you that shows up a little differently, how do you, create that in your system to just hold yourself to that high regard, right? That's the congruency piece, like stepping into that next version of yourself.
Yep, spot on. So I always ask myself, what do I want to manifest? Because if I want to manifest that, then ultimately I need to be showing up with that energy as though it's already there. We spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. You hold it in your vision already there, because then I know I'm going to manifest it. And quite frankly, that leads us into our next contradiction. So what was our fourth contradiction that we were talking about, Lona?
Yeah. So we have 5 of them. So the fourth one was that the capacity that like you feel you're growing and you almost like resist the growth, right? So I've talked to quite a few build docs that like will get to the next level and something will be chaotic, or, there's more stuff undone, and they almost like work themselves back to the smaller state because they haven't stepped into that next capacity. And we could use that as, a metaphor for lots of different things in life. Like when you went from high school to college to chiropractic school, you had to grow different levels of capacity. It didn't feel comfortable right away, right? That's how you know you're growing. Just seeking out more and more of that discomfort lets you know that you're breathing and you're not repeating that same day over and over and over again, like Groundhog's Day, right? And so just ask yourself sometimes, do I resist the squeeze that I need to go through to birth into this next iteration?
Oh, that's powerful. It reminds me of a quote that I heard from one of my great mentors, and that was that the level of your life will be relative to the level of your ability to deal with higher level problems.
Mm-hmm.
So as your business starts to grow, sure, you have new problems. They come in a new form or shape. They're still problems, okay?
Right.
And our ability to how we deal with those issues is directly shaped to how big a life we'll lead. So people that, I remember when I was studying chiropractic, I was working in a bakery. The level of my problems now, retrospectively, was pretty small. It was like showing up on shift on time, making sure the bread was out by 8 o'clock, making sure the donuts were out by 9 o'clock, making sure the cookies were done by midday, making sure that everything was packed by 2 p.m., right? Now, in hindsight, I look at those things and I go, relatively low-level issues. And that's why, I was rewarded accordingly. I was probably working for like, I don't know, $12 an hour at that stage, maybe less. And at the time, though,
Wait,
I was like,
can you say that again?
I was working for $12 an hour.
And you were rewarded accordingly.
And I was rewarded accordingly. Exactly right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, that was a level of stress. The cookies had to be done by midday. Everything had to be packed by either 2 or 3 p.m., right? Because home time is right after that. I had to make sure that I was there at 5 a.m. most mornings because, the bread has to go out by 8. So it's like, at the time, that were the levels of the issues that I was dealing with. And so I get rewarded accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
So I also like the saying that your new high is now your new low. So it's like when you grow and you get to a new high, you're like, wow, and there's a lot of stuff going on. Okay, adapt, learn how to adapt to it. And it is possible to adapt to it because guess what? There's been tens of thousands of chiropractors go before you that have exceeded that level and adapted to it. So if it's one person that's done it, it is possible. So then you want to look at that and go, okay, the new high is now the new low. Don't look at it as like, I'm on this new level. I don't know if I can maintain this, so this is going to fall apart any time now because that's not really productive for your growth. And quite frankly, that last one there is actually related to our 5th contradiction that we're going to talk about in a minute, right, too. But I don't want to go there just yet because I know that, Lona, you might want to unpack a little bit more. But what do you mean by that? Do you want to take us through a little bit more detail what you meant by number 4 and how we can apply it for ourselves? How can we take that now and apply it into practice?
Yeah. So, I'll use an example of a doc that's just newly in practice, right? Where they had been an associate before and had really learned how to take on the problem, if you will, using Bobby's language of I got to solve the problem of how do I do a good report of findings? How do I do a good day one? How do I do, all these things that are more systematic to relating to the patient care. Now, as we've opened our own practice, now we're putting on our hat, that's the entrepreneurial hat and the marketing hat and still the clinician. And, it can feel really like a lot when you're used to not having to do those other pieces, right? But you're growing, the capacity is growing. But I notice that sometimes it's an overwhelm to the point where the person can almost have a mini implosion because their nervous system hasn't regulated yet for the demand that's going to be on it. So I think, when you think about that, when you think about your vision, this is why also just really owning your own vision and realizing, like, to Bobby's point, like, can I have better problems, right? Like, the better problems would be I've stepped faster and more fully into this next version of myself, and I'm having to acclimate and solve problems that aren't the problems of if I don't grow. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, just choose your hard, right? Choose your hard there, and recognize when you hear yourself potentially complaining about things that you're going through, ask yourself sometimes, like, is this the problem I actually wanted to have? And that a lot of times help you then stop that energy of sort of like almost like stifling your own growth. Hopefully that makes sense. But
No, it's spot on, makes sense. And I'm glad that you said it because, I'm going to reiterate that by saying, you know what, guys, if you want to grow this year, okay, whenever you're listening to this, here is the message for you. You ready? Growth is hard. Okay, growth is going to be painful. All right. It's not going to be, oh, this is easy and easy. Growth is hard and painful. Come to terms with that. Here's what else I know.
Lifting heavier weights, right?
Exactly right. But then you adapt to that, and what happens to your muscles? They get stronger. And if you don't do that, guess what also happens that's even harder? Okay, sarcopenia occurs where your muscles start to deteriorate if you're not doing that, and that's even harder. So that brings me to my next point. Plateauing is hard. Okay, when you're plateauing and stuck on one level, that's difficult, that's hard. And you can see where this is going already. Point number 3, shrinking is hard. Okay, shrinking is difficult and it's hard. So at the end of the day, choose your hard. I know which one I want, and I prefer the hard of growth rather than the hard of like shrinking or plateauing, because I know that what's easy now is going to be harder later on, and what's harder now is going to be easier later on. So I believe as humans we're designed to grow, and it's the progression towards a goal that actually satisfies us internally, not necessarily the attainment of the goal.
Right. I was talking to Dr. Devin Vrana, who will be speaking at the immersion this weekend, and we were just talking about like that evolution too of what was hard as you were building a practice and seeing more patients and developing that capacity to see volume. Then eventually, like, there's the hard of also like, what if I'm not the one seeing the volume? And the reframe in your own mind, which leads us into kind of that next piece of like, it's okay for you to keep changing forms, right? That's part of the evolution, and can be some of the limiting beliefs that we get stuck at is when we haven't allowed ourselves to step into that next iteration.
Yep, nailed it, spot on. And that sets us up perfectly for our 5th contradiction. You ready? Here is a big one, and I want you to listen to this one carefully. And I want you, when you hear this one, to ask yourself the question, where in my life have I absolutely been found guilty of this? Because I know that this one applies to all of us, myself included, okay, because no one is perfect in their mindset management, but this is a huge one, and that is this. I know that your most dominating thoughts become your reality. Full stop. And when you hear that statement in line, most people agree with that. Your most dominating thoughts manifest your reality. So then, do we have a contradiction where we have a certain goal, but our most dominating thoughts is constantly all the obstacles in the way of us achieving that goal? Okay. Is it that we're always, this doesn't work in my area. This doesn't work in my area. I've tried this doesn't work. The amount of people that say to me this line, I've tried Facebook ads, they don't work. And they say it with such certainty that it doesn't work, full stop, move on, next thing. And I'm like, whoa, you are throwing away a huge opportunity, potentially worth tens of millions of dollars, because maybe you had one bad experience. Maybe it was 5 bad experiences. Heck, I think I had 8, 9, 10 bad experiences. But one thing that I didn't do is I didn't say, doesn't work, that's it, put it in the doesn't work basket, look for the new thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So your most dominating thought becomes your reality. So the contradiction that I see there is that people say they want one thing, i.e. their goals, but what's continually on their mind is all the reasons why that actually isn't going to work for them.
Well, and sometimes their dominating thought isn't even their own. It's been passed on from someone else, right? So I had, again, a newer doc who said, in the practice I worked in before, December was always slow. So I just already had prepared myself that December is always slow. And it was like, it doesn't have to be true. It certainly isn't true in everyone's practice. But if that's the way that we go in thinking about it, it will be true.
Absolutely. I can tell you in our practice, it's not true. I used to think that for years, probably for the first maybe 6 years, I used to think around November, mid, it starts slowing down. And so guess what we would do? Stop investing in our marketing, because that was on our mind. Nowadays, it's like business as usual. We go all the way through. We have chiropractors that are adjusting. We have marketing that's going all the way through. Everything is full boil, and it's reflected in our numbers now in January, which I was literally just reviewing this morning. So it's your most dominating thought that becomes your reality. So be careful that you're shaping your mind in a way that your most dominating thought is what your goal and your vision is that you hold, and not all the reasons why you think it's not possible to achieve that.
Yep.
Okay.
Right on.
Because I don't think I need to convince anyone on this call about the brilliance of the human brain and the nervous system, and how it's the most amazing thing and how it's the most powerful thing. And we all agree on this. Yet we very seldom, many of us at least, don't put effort, energy into, well, how do we harness this thing? And, I don't need to get spoon fed every little, like I said before, I'll have mentors that I'll pay 50 grand a year, 80 grand a year, right? There's levels to this, guys. And they don't spoon feed me, do this, and then this, and then this, and then this, okay? They show me the dots and they say, here's the pathway where you are now, okay? Here's the pathway to go to the next level. And then you can connect the dots in your own way using intuition and using initiative, okay? Mm-hmm. But let me highlight the path, or let me show you what the dots look like.
So good. Yes. And if you're someone who's struggled keeping your mindset in growth and knowing that it's possible, it's all the more reason why you do need to really seek out your mentors who have walked that path before you and are ahead of you along the way to help point out those dots.
Yep, spot on. So the big thing this all comes back down to, guys, is I feel, and I know Lona, tell me if you agree with this. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but in order to do this process properly and to iron out contradictions, the starting point is you need to know your core values. You agree?
Yes, I do agree. I think that's helpful to align with what matters most and where am I out of integrity with that.
Yep, spot on the line. And let me tell you guys, when you know your core values with a deeper level of clarity than what you do now, it's going to help you rise to the next level. And you might look at your core values and you might say, some of these have become a bit redundant, like they sounded good at the time, but now they're not really as relevant. So they need to evolve. That's what happened to me about 18 months to almost 2 years ago now. Some of you might need to go back and revisit these. You should be able to, if I say to you right now, tell me what your top core values are, you should be able to bang, 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 recite them out loud and give me a paragraph explanation on each one and what that means for you. Okay, that's the level of clarity that we need about them. So people often get stuck with this. If you guys want to see our core values, use them for reference. No problems, guys. I'm happy to share my core values. I'm sure Lona's happy to share hers. All you got to do is add us on our socials. So add us on our Instagram, guys, and send us a message, core values. And I'll shoot you over my core values. Dr. Lona can shoot you over hers. Use those as references, guys, and go back, refine these, and then use them ultimately to iron out contradictions. Because like Ayn Rand famously said, contradictions lead to destruction. So we know that if we can start to create congruency, that's when we create alignment. And isn't that funny that that's the word that we use in practice all the time, alignment, right?
Right. And a lot of it is using your mind to find alignment with the action that you have to take, like building a practice. Let's say your core value is freedom, right? And it feels not free when you have to be in your practice more. You just have to connect the two, right? So a lot of it is just taking that time to do the work to see how it's actually related to having more freedom.
Yep. Nailed it. Dr. Lona, pleasure as always. I'll let you rock and roll. Great episode. Definitely go back and listen to this one, guys, because that's where it all starts with our mindset. Anything you want to manifest, it's going to start upstairs in the mind first before it manifests in the real. So love this. Yeah. And until next week, we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, Bobby. Bye-bye.
See you later.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Build Your Remarkable Practice podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like the podcast, please subscribe, share with your friends, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, please click the links in the show notes to schedule a call.